welcome to the Mini Storage Messenger Developers Webinar Series. My name is Poppy Behrens. I'm the co-publisher at Mini Co-Publishing, and we're delighted to have you in the audience today. Also with me are Caesar Wright and R.K. Klebenstein, who will be presenters for this webinar.
Good morning, Poppy. This is R.K.
And
good
Caesar,
morning, Poppy. Good morning, Poppy. This is Caesar.
This is one of several informative webinars planned for self-storage owners, operators, managers, investors, developers, and other industry professionals. First of all, we'd like to thank Mako Steel for their sponsorship of this free event. Mako Steel designs, supplies, and installs steel buildings for the self-storage industry, including single-story, multi-story, RV and boat storage, climate-controlled, and custom buildings. Mako has offices in Carlsbad, California, Jacksonville, Florida, and Vancouver, Washington. As a testament to Mako's success, more than 70% of its business comes from repeat customers and referrals. This January will mark the 30th anniversary of Mini Storage Messenger magazine. Published by Minico Inc., Messenger provides the self-storage industry with in-depth news and information. Each issue offers cover stories and feature articles on the most timely industry topics and trends. In addition, monthly columns contributed by industry experts and accomplished business professionals address a wide range of topics including security, facility operations, technology, legal issues, legislative updates, construction, and development. Minico also publishes a variety of other self-storage data sources such as the ones you see listed on your screen. For more information about these products, please visit our website at ministoragemessenger.com. Throughout today's webinar, we invite you to submit any questions you may have. To do so, simply type your question in the question area and click Send. Questions will be answered either privately or to the entire group. While we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the question and answer period at the end of this webinar, those that cannot be answered due to time constraints will be answered by email after the webinar. In addition, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on demand from our archives at ministoragemessenger.com. Today's presentation should run approximately 45 minutes with the remainder of the hour open to questions and answers. The topic of today's webinar is RV and boat storage condominiums. Caesar Wright, president of Mako Steel, and R.K. Klebenstein, president of Coast to Coast Storage, will cover a variety of topics. R.K. will lead off with a discussion of the storage condo concept, pros and cons, market and site selection, econometrics, and feasibility. Caesar will then cover facts and figures, construction trends, amenities, and references. Our first speaker this morning is Caesar Wright, president of Mako Steel, which designs, supplies, and installs steel buildings for the self-storage industry. Mr. Wright opened Mako Steel in 1993. He has contributed many articles to Mini Storage Messenger magazine over the years on various topics with a special focus on RV and boat facilities and logistics. Mr. Wright has been in the steel business his entire career and has risen from an entry-level sales position to CEO at a remarkably young age. He is respected in the industry for his ability to manage, negotiate, and succeed without compromising his integrity or his great sense of humor. And now it is my distinct pleasure to turn this presentation over to Caesar.
Thank you, Poppy. Good day to all of our listeners out there. Hopefully we over the next 45 minutes or so, will give you some real good insight and thoughts on this very hot trend that we're seeing in the storage industry with the condominium aspect. My dear friend, Mr. R.K. Klebenstein, is going to lead us off this morning. How are you, R.K., today?
It's the best day of my life. Thanks for asking, Caesar.
Excellent. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn the first portion of this session over to R.K. And R.K., if you'd be kind enough to get us started, we look forward to listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Caesar. Thank you, Poppy Minico. And to all of our listeners out there, a great day to you as well. What an exciting topic, storage condominiums. It's really the rage now, and it's a niche product that has really become the emphasis of many developers today as they look at the self-storage business and wonder, where do we go from here? Well, storage condos is a relatively new concept. We try and figure out where it first developed. We think it might have been back in Ohio or Minnesota, where some of the older storage condominium spaces have been developed over a period of time. I know that the horseradish that's involved in so much of the Milwaukee area seems to just create all kinds of questions. When you say horseradish, what do you think we're talking about, Caesar? Of course, we're talking about storage condominiums. It's a bit harsh, but it does spice up your life, that's for sure. Well, where did the concept begin? Certainly, we think it was about 1980 in the Midwest someplace. Today, we've seen it flourish more on the coastal regions, all the way from the Pacific Northwest down through California, across Arizona, through Texas, in Florida, and then up into the Atlantic seaboard. We haven't seen it grow as quickly in the Midwest, even though that's where it actually began. That being said, what's happening out there is a tremendous amount of development and prospective development projects. When I say prospective development projects, we're going to cover that a little bit later, but it's really interesting what's happening in the development process. So now that we know where the concept began, we can begin to understand more about the business itself. Caesar, have you ever been asked, really, why boat and RV storage?
I think, RK, with the recent trend that we've seen in the condominium side of things is that with so many people traveling now by RV, since our tragic day of 9/11, I've seen RV sales have gone literally up about 40% since that time frame. So one thing that we do see is the need for it because we just don't have enough of it out there to house these vehicles.
Well, that's really true, and some of the record-setting precedents in the industry would include a $31.5 million sale of a rental park in California, which really put the emphasis on the potential of the value of RV and boat storage, and now that's beginning to trend its way over to the condominium side of the business. There's a firm out there called Garagetown, which we may all be familiar with. It seems to be the market leader, at least in terms of the number of properties that they have developed and have really begun to put into the industry a standard, if you will, for storage condominiums. And so we look at Garagetown as a market leader, and then many other developers who are doing some exceptional things, such as Ted Dietz at Eucalyptus at Beaumont, who's shown us that marketing can make a tremendous difference in the sales activity of storage condominiums. So we ask, where is this idea going? Well, as difficult as the finance and capital markets have been on rental projects, it may be the wave of the future that has the strongest growth potential in it, largely because it's getting very difficult to get condominium deals from a financing perspective, but yet that's easier than in the rental portion. So that builds a pretty strong case. Well, you might ask yourself, what are some of the pros and cons that are associated with RV and boat storage, and how do they weigh against one another? I wanted to take some time this morning to talk about some of those pros and cons and to give you some ideas about why RV and boat storage condominiums. First of all, the exit strategy seems to be the #1 reason people are really interested in vehicle storage condominiums. I like the get in, get out side of the business. When we're in rental projects, we're at the woes of the marketplace for such a long period of time, whereas in storage condominiums, once it's sold out, your investment is out and you are now able to deploy that capital someplace else. As with almost all storage projects, size matters. However, in the rental side of it, the larger the project, the greater the efficiencies that are achieved. In the storage condominium side of it, it's actually its limited size where you're able to do 40 or 50 spaces in a 2 to 2.5 acre parcel that really accelerate the returns in this investment. First of all, you get to your terminal event faster if you have a smaller project, and I really like that 40 to 50 total space environment. That seems to be a sizing that works very well both from a land acquisition perspective and from a sellout. By that limited size, it also reduces the initial investment, your capital that's come in, the equity that's required. If a typical development loan would be a 50-50, where you'd be required to put 50% equity, obviously the smaller you start, the easier it's going to be to get in. And that then means that our total capitalization with both equity and debt is lower, and so ergo the entire risk portfolio seems to be tamed by the limited size. So I really like the fact that you can do this in smaller sizes. And as one of our callers is sending in a question, or one of our listeners is sending in a question, you can phase these projects, which even makes them more interesting because you can do a building at a time and really begin to understand the absorption process. In the absorption process, one of the greatest benefits of storage condominiums is the ability to test the water with pre-sales. In other words, you don't even actually have to own the property if you could find a seller who would be willing to give you a long enough due diligence period where you could get your test marketing, get your engineering done, do your pre-sale marketing with a website and an on-site sales signage, market it very heavily within the local community, and perhaps go all the way through the process without ever taking control of the property, without ever taking ownership. This greatly reduced your risks in the entire project.
RK, if I may cite a quick example.
Sure, absolutely.
On the pre-sales, Ted Dietz, again, who we'll mention a couple times throughout this webinar today, he is the owner and operator of Eucalyptus at Beaumont. He has about 97 units in his total project, of which he released a phase 1, which had 37 units in it. And prior to putting a shovel in the dirt, Ted had sold 33 of those units. Again, by marketing, he was able to obtain financing at least a little bit easier, though Ted might debate that. But bringing that to the bank also made that a little bit more of attractive from a lending standpoint.
And Caesar, that's a great point because it does fall right in within that bandwidth that I talked about of 40 units in that first phase.
Absolutely.
40 to 50 space project. So that really proves that the testing the waters is a benefit and a pro in developing storage condominiums. What was interesting is when we did our first feasibility study, Caesar, we went out to the marketplace and said, okay, how many of these are out there? How successful have they been? What kind of rates per square foot have they been selling at? We really wanted to develop a database of good, hard information. We went to the internet and saw a wide variety of projects that were out there for sale. So excited we were to start calling all of these developers and finding out what kind of success they had, only to find out that most of them were pre-marketing deals, had not actually turned a blade of dirt yet, but it looked like virtually that they had sold and built the entire project so far.
Absolutely. Interesting.
So we learned a lot about the fact that there really are not that many projects that have come out of the ground, and those that have come out seem to be pretty successful. Of course, we've talked about Garagetown and those folks really being market leaders in terms of getting a number of projects with different locations out in the marketplace and working to market those products. Well, certainly there has to be some kind of cons in this business, and I don't mean cons by convicts. I mean negative things about developing the business. Well, guess what? Our very first positive, the pros, is also one of the cons, and that is the exit strategy. The exit strategy, remember, on the pro side of it was a quick in, quick out, which really allowed us to develop a strength there. However, so many of us in the storage business are used to long-term residual annuity type cash flows where we own these projects and year after year the rents increase, our debt goes down, and they just become better and better investments over a period of time. Well, that annuity concept goes away when you go with storage condominiums because you're in and you're out, and it's a terminal value proposition. So this is going to help build your income statement, but it's not really going to help increase your net worth because the project, of course, after it's been sold, no longer has those legs in it. So you're losing that value over a period of time, the accreted growth in the value of the asset as you would see it in a rental project. Well, a failure could also be tough on the ego. If you were out in there and you were marketing in the virtual space of the internet and as well putting your signs up on your site, if the project doesn't come to fruition, that visibility and its high amount of interest that is on vehicle storage condominiums might be a little bit tough on the ego. However, we have been able to talk to bankers who have said, you know what, we'd much rather see this project be abandoned early on in the process, and when you don't get enough pre-sales, go ahead and terminate the project as opposed to spending $4.5 or $5 or $6 million on a rental project, and then finding out 2 or 3 years later that it didn't rent as well as you had originally anticipated. And so that becomes a really, really difficult part of it, but an offset to it nonetheless. That risk becomes mitigated to a certain extent. The other tough part about vehicle storage condominiums is the financing. The capital markets have not responded well to vehicle storage condominiums, and especially are very, very tough on those end loans. However, that having been said, what we found is that the folks who are buying these in the end loans tend to be very, very high net worth, high income, highly qualified individuals. And so the financing from their perspective became easier because they could go to their own bank and pull the end loans. And there are typically community banks in almost every part of the country where people are anticipating doing vehicle storage condominiums. There are community banks that are willing to do the financing for the end product. So while it's a con part of it, you do have to go looking for it. It doesn't come to you as easily. It is out there, and typically the kind of folks that want to get financed are very well qualified. Buzz Victor asked about mixed-use projects, and he was wondering, well, do you see a lot of business customers? Absolutely. One of the things that we found when we started going through this process and doing our due diligence was that this is a highly attractive product to folks who have like cabinet shops or landscaping businesses where they've been renting and using self-storage to park their trailers, and not quite big enough yet for what we call flex space in the 2,500 square foot range, but these 1,000 square foot spaces work really attractive in that bandwidth. And so it becomes a product that appeals to a wide variety of clients, and that granularity of client base really helps. So then what about the market selection? Where do I go? What do I start when I want to determine where I'd like to build a storage condominium? Well, once again, size matters. And when I say that, I'm talking about markets now, not about the specific sites or projects. Always keeping in mind that the bigger the market, the more head count there is, the less rural you are and the more urban and suburban, the more targets there are out there or potential prospects to buy your storage condominium project. And so access to them and proximity to large demographic areas is going to help tremendously. Also, because this is a product that you're in and you're out of, it's less sensitive to how close the sponsor or developer is located to the project. You could quite easily live in Southern California and have one of these in Las Vegas, Lake Havasu, Denver, any place that's really easy to travel to, because your amount of time you're spending on the project once it's launched tends to be less, and because it has a finite life to it now, you're not married to this project forever and ever, and so you can choose a more diverse locational background. One of the things you have to decide in terms of your market is, are you at a destination or an origination location? What that means is destination says that you would be located near a state park, near an ocean, near some kind of attraction that brings people and their RVs and or boats. A great example of that would be Gulfport, Mississippi, where you have gaming and you have hunting, fishing, the ocean. I mean, it's a tremendous, that whole Gulfport region is a very attractive area for RVs, and you see just tons of them out on the street when you're there. An origination location says, I'm going to keep this where I live most of the year. So, for example, the snowbirds who travel down to Scottsdale or Arizona or Southern California or Florida, they may spend their summers in Michigan or New York, wherever they happen to be from. The origination location would say, I'm going to have that close to my home where I live full time. Fuel prices have really put a pressure on destination locations, a very positive pressure, because people are saying, you know what, I could drive this back to Michigan from Florida, but do I really want to make that 1,400-mile trek and pay the gas bills? And so they're looking at now for their storage options near the destination as much as they are the origination. So it's really created a whole new segment of the market for us to analyze and to look at. In terms of specific market selection, it's less sensitive to zoning, and that's a really interesting scenario, because the product can be cast as a condominium project, more toward the industrial side and manufacturing side, or you can spin it more toward the storage side of it to fill in and fall into different zoning classifications. So it's really cool that you have a lot more flexibility with storage condominiums. And the benefit is, in many ways, most municipalities simply don't know what to do with the product. They don't know really what it is because there are so few of them out there. So few of them have been brought before zoning boards that they don't really understand the product, and so they don't know where to fit it into their municipal code. That was the same as self-storage was back in the 1970s when municipalities didn't know what to do with self-storage projects, and they finally began to evolve their municipal codes to incorporate specific product uses. I think we'll see the same thing happen with storage condominiums as well. Then there's the question of logistics and access versus the traffic counts. What we want to impart here is it's important that you understand that high traffic count locations, while they may be excellent for self-storage projects and very important for rental projects, that storage condominiums are less sensitive to that. That means that you can take a location in terms of site selection that is not as visible and maybe fits better into the zoning codes. What you're really looking here for are logistics. How close are they to the freeway access? How easy is it to get in and out of the site? Are you having to cross 4 lanes or 2 lanes without a divided barrier? Is there easy turnaround if you need to come back and make a U-turn? All of those things become more important in the site selection process. And once again, size matters, because now you can start to go out and look for 2.5 to 3 acre parcels as opposed to 7 or 8 acre parcels, which would be required in a rental project. So size really comes back into play again and becomes an important and an interesting part of the site selection process when it comes to storage.
RK, if I may jump in real quick, because I think that's such an important comment there. When we look at sites and are showing sites for boat and RV condo projects, either for rent or for sale, boat and RV projects, you touch on something very key there, and that is the location. People that we've seen are willing to drive a little bit farther to store their RV or boat just because really they don't have much of an option. Due to land costs, it's very expensive, and boat and RV storage is very land intensive. When you look on a per acre build out for boat and RV storage, typically we use the percentage of about 35% coverage per acre when we're doing a layout if it's just strictly 90-degree turn-in and closed storage. So having land that's really not close to a downtown or you know, the prototype self-storage site where you demographically put a bullseye on that and kind of draw a 5-mile radius, you could see that radius get drawn about 30 to 35 miles, and that's proven in boat and RV storage condos. Just wanted to kind of make that point real quick, RK.
That is a great point, and if someone would send an email to me and just put white paper on it, my email address is rk@askrk.com. I have a white paper that addresses that specific issue, Caesar. One of the things that we've begun to understand in this business, both from a rental and to a certain extent from the condominium, is that there are so few of these projects in major metropolitan areas that they're able to draw from very, very, very wide market areas. You know, you might be able to draw an entire county or 2 counties because there's no other product available. Folks would drive 20 or 25 miles. Well, as this product populates and more of them are put into metropolitan areas, it's going to decrease those market areas. So where you might be able to have controlled a 25-mile radius, 3 or 4 projects now located would bring your sizing down to maybe only being able to get into a 5 or 6 acre market. And that's really important as this populates, that we understand, particularly on the rental side, how inconvenient it may be to go all the way across town. Now, if you think about self-storage, it's much more difficult to move out of self-storage. If you've got a 10 by 20 that's chock full, there's a high barrier to moving that. You have to rent a truck or find transportation, unload that whole thing, load it into the truck, and take it someplace else. And so for a few dollars or convenience, folks are not likely to go through those pains. In RV and boat storage, it's the turn of a key and that transience and mobility that means someone could just simply drive it to a new location. In storage condominiums, that still plays into effect because they may drive all the way to the other side of town, and be willing to go to a greater length in order to find a storage condominium. When a new project is built closer to their house, because they already own that one across town, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to sell it and move to something closer. So the stability of it becomes important, and that's where we go back to those other slides where we talked about the in and out. That's why I really like the closure on this investment, because if it does populate, it doesn't affect me. I've already sold as a developer. I've already sold my units. It may affect the resale of them, but from a developer's perspective, it becomes increasingly important to, again, realize the benefits of being in or out. Econometrics, size matters. Once again, we talked about that investment criteria and how important it was that if you could limit the amount of initial investment, which may be almost limited to nothing more than your marketing expenses and your engineering if you're going out and doing pre-sales and not taking down the land, this really creates an efficiency in being able to do smaller projects. And as you've mentioned, Caesar, the ability now, because of so much land that doesn't produce income, that's the Achilles heel of all vehicle storage, whether it's boats or RVs, is that you have to have these tremendously wide drive aisles that produce absolutely no income. Self-storage, we learned to gain the efficiencies. We can go up versus out, to a multi-story. We've got it in self-storage. In RV and boat storage, we're just now beginning to understand how we can really improve. And Caesar, I hope you're going to touch on things like diagonals versus 90s and pull-throughs.
Absolutely.
Because the way you design that project and the way you build it is really important. And so listen very carefully when Caesar talks about layouts, because it can make an absolute tremendous difference in the econometrics and in the investment of this if you don't lay it out properly from the very beginning. You need to understand the difference between total cost and sales prices. Setting that price is so important right from the very beginning, and being able to determine if your market will sustain $125 per foot sale price if your total cost, including the land, is $75 a square foot. You really have to understand this, and that's why it's important that you get good feasibility data, whether you're doing it yourself or using an outside firm. You need to understand what your sales potential prices are, because it's going to make or break a storage condominium project. And don't forget the marketing and closing costs. I can't tell you how many developers pro formas I've seen that have been so weak in marketing and so weak in closing costs, because they all affect the total sales price per unit of the project. And we load, in our feasibility studies, we load every possible cost we can down to the unit, not on the developer, but on the space itself, so we can see what the real total cost is. Because just like any other investment, it's all about return, return, return. If you can't get an internal rate of return that satisfies your investment criteria, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So as you look at feasibility, one of the key considerations is the market and the site. How good is this market? Will it sustain a project? Is this good for 3 or 4 different projects located across town? Do I do a 50-unit project where I start with 10 or 20, or do I take the Ted Dietz model, which is I do 150 and I start with 50? Finding your way through this becomes an important part of the feasibility of the project. What kind of amenities am I going to offer? And I know, Caesar, you're going to talk a little bit later about some of the things that are involved in amenities, but we've seen a wide variety of them, from webcams that go inside spaces so that the owners can go in and look right inside their space and see what's happening and see if their precious Ferrari and their vintage Buick is safe and secure. We've seen restrooms added to them, floor coverings, all the way down to tile and actual granite marble floors on these. It's just amazing the wide variety of amenities that are in projects. And those amenities have to be chosen for the development itself. You may not go to the extent that Ted has gone to with a cigar bar and a swimming pool, but you will want to have certain amenities that will attract your sales clientele, and that's where it becomes important. In feasibility, I cannot impress enough upon you to use costs and stress costs. When I say stress costs, we're saying, okay, if I'm projecting a build-out of a sell-out of 24 months, what do my returns look like if it goes to 36 months, if it goes to 48 months? What do my returns look like if my costs go from $75 a foot to $80 a foot? Using these sensitivities are very important. What happens if interest rates go up 2.5%, 250 basis points? What does that do to my return? All of these things become really, really important, but the one that you have to work on the hardest is that sales price sensitivity, moving that number up and down to make sure that you know what the effects are on the return on investment if you don't make the sales price that you're targeted for. If your market will not sustain that $125 or $150 sales price that you're looking for, incredibly important that you use that stress analysis and determine whether or not the project is viable based on that. That all, going back to one of our very first slides, is what is the exit strategy? Where do I think I can sell this project in the end? And am I located in a market area that has enough people to sustain these sales? When we look at feasibility, one of the things that we do look at are the demographics, but that's not nearly as important as looking at the sales data to see how many Class A's were sold in 2007 in the county that I'm located in. That data becomes hugely important in the analysis of whether or not these projects are truly feasible. And so we really encourage you not to just get stuck in the demography. By the way, the demography can be very, very difficult position right now because that census was done in 2000, actually done in 1998 and 1999 when the information was gathered. Well, we didn't have a credit crunch. We didn't have a housing crunch. We didn't have Hurricane Katrina. All of these things have greatly changed what the demographers' initial thoughts were about projections for that 10-year period. The number one advice I can give you in closing is make sure you've got a strong team. Guys like Caesar who understand this business, who have built a number of these things. Don't become the college education for a contractor who this is their first time out and have never built one of these before. Build yourself a great team right from site selection all the way through to the sales management process and making sure that you have that strong team in place as you move forward. And speaking of strong teams, we're going to kick it out here from the golf course in Atlantis, Florida, and send it on over to you, Caesar.
Thank you, RK. RK, I've been in this business 19 years now, and I can listen to you for 20 minutes still after hearing you several times and always gain something from it. So I obviously appreciate your insight, and your knowledge in this industry is phenomenal. So thank you very much. Well, this afternoon, folks, we're going to touch on my portion of this presentation. We're going to touch on some facts and figures, some construction trends we're currently seeing within these boat and RV storage condo facilities, and at the end, we're going to put some references out to you also. Again, this is a market that is growing so quickly. There's some facts and figures that I want to touch on with you folks. Nearly 1 in 12 U.S. households either own a boat or RV. That's a 58% increase since 1980. Just a phenomenal number. In the calendar year of 2008, we've got some data from the Communities Association Institute, and they reported more than 300,000 communities that had 24.1 million residences. That equates to over 2 million boats and RVs. So again, just a staggering number. My next slide here that I'm going to bring up is an aerial photo of a project that we did in Lake Havasu City. It's called Island Self-Storage. This project, let me see if we can bring it up here for you, has about, here it is, it's 11 buildings total. It consists of 311,000 square feet. That's in excess of 7 acres rentable space. As you can see, if up is north, if you will, north of this site is plans for future development. If we go to the west of the site, you see an existing community that's already there. So as you can see, location here is phenomenal. When I bring up this next slide, I'm going to show what really makes it attractive is Lake Havasu itself. Lake Havasu is about a 25-mile long lake that receives its water from the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead up there. This marina that you see up towards the top of the page, it accommodates just about 1,200 boats. So as you can see here with the location of this certain facility, he's kind of got it from all angles. He's got future development that's going to be happening. He's got existing that's already there, and obviously the lake itself, which is a tremendous part of his business there. This gentleman also has access directly to a launch ramp, which is very important when you're looking at boat storage itself. Sure makes it very easy to be able to head to your storage facility, get to your unit, pull your boat out, and then have immediate access to the launch ramp. Discussing some construction trends here on our next slide, we've noticed that boat and RV storage has grown as far as the width of the units. Back when we first started doing this, and I would say the late 80s and early 90s is kind of when we really got into boat and RV storage. We used to see a bay width of 12 feet wide that would accommodate a door width of 10 foot 8 inches. Those days are no longer. The construction trends we're currently seeing now are much wider units, specifically when you're getting into the condo aspect of these boat and RV storage facilities. The standard size width we see is 14 foot wide. That accommodates a 12-foot wide door. And most all doors, when you're talking boat and RV storage, are 14 foot tall. There's an actual legal height for a recreational vehicle on the road. That height is 13 foot 6 inches. So no rig or RV, if you will, on the road can exceed that height. So a 14-foot door tall will accommodate any RV legally that's on the road today. When we talk about these condo facilities, we're seeing the wider units become a little bit more of a trend. The 18-foot wide units, the 24-foot wide units, and even these 28-foot wide units. Touching on the 18-foot wide units, typically what we've seen is a bay width of 18 foot. It may be as deep as 50 foot. I'm going to cite some examples here shortly with some layouts. But that may accommodate a 12 by 14 roll-up door or sectional door. Next to it, it may have a 3.0 or 4.0, 7.0 swing door. That's become popular from an accessibility standpoint here recently in the boat and RV condo world. As we go down my bullet points here on the sectional doors, we typically do see these a little bit more so now as a boat and RV condo. We call these the for sale projects. Typically, your buyers like to see possibly the facility as an extension of their home. Sectional doors is what you very commonly see in your residence as your operating garage door. So we do see sectional doors a little bit more frequently on the for sale projects as compared to the for rent projects. To give you a quick cost comparison on that, sectional doors do run $300 to $400 more per door than a standard commercial roll-up door that's chain hoisted. Climate control is something, RK, you probably have had a fair amount of inquiries here as of late. Something that's very difficult to do in boat and RV storage because think about your access point. You have exterior access, so when you try to climate control a building, it becomes difficult because each time a door is opened from the exterior, it is obviously allowing outside air to be flowing through that building. What we've seen people trying to do or attempting to do from a mechanical standpoint is take a look at where they're at, be it are you in the desert, are you in cold country, be it Colorado, providing a roof insulation that could be an R19, which equates to 6 inches, and then doing a wall insulation of R13, which is a 4-inch insulation, is one thing people have done to try to basically solicit the climate control. And then what they'll do is bring in a mechanical contractor to try to meter that air and find the proper mechanical equipment to actually climate control those units. Most all of these are in the condo world are individually metered / electric. They may have a 30 amp sub panel or for an RV hookup panel and a 100 amp sub panel. That's what one customer of ours is currently doing right now. But typically in all these condo projects for boat and RV, you will see them individually metered. Wider drive aisles, that's something, RK, that you touched on a little bit earlier, and I actually jumped in and interrupted you, and I can't stress the importance of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The project that we're doing for Ted Dietz, the Eucalyptus at Beaumont, Ted has 71-foot driveways. Is that not phenomenal, RK?
That's awesome, and that's what I think has to be part of what drives his sales process being so strong because of those wide drive aisles. You know, I think about coming off of Lake Mead and parking my boat inside of a unit that had a very, very small door on it and a small drive aisle. And let me tell you, my neighboring friends who had way too many six-packs in 110-degree heat, that door gets narrower and narrower, and those aisles get smaller and smaller the longer the day goes on.
Well, it's always an entertaining day to see the launch ramp at day's end, and then also when you're at your facility trying to store, if you're kind of working in an area where you're going to have more boat storage, people backing their trailers into an actual unit there. I'll give you an example. On these wider drive aisles, a friend of mine, he's got a 24-foot boat with a Ford truck. So basically, by the time you have the trailer and in tow, you're running right about 42, 43 feet. And to square up in a drive aisle, I mean, 50, 55 feet RK is kind of commonly what we see when we're doing some layouts on 90-degree enclosed boat and RV storage. I personally like 55 feet. I don't really like much less than that in 90-degree boat and RV storage. When you have 71 feet like Ted Dietz does, well, I'll tell you, it's worth something there. Again, it does just make everything a little bit easier. Again, boat and RV storage, very land intensive, at times very hard to do when you're doing your layout and penciling out this project, factoring in those wide driveways. So
well, Caesar, this industry seems to be growing the same way I am. The older I get, the wider I get. Here, the units are getting wider. The drive aisles are getting wider. This is just right up my alley.
Absolutely. And again, RK, you mentioned something that's not on my bullet point here, but I will talk about the angle enclosed. And folks, what I mean by that is when you do angle enclosed boat and RV storage, we're now turning our building and framing system at a 60-degree angle. By doing that, if you were paying attention earlier, I mentioned I like 55-foot wide driveways in 90-degree enclosed boat and RV storage. By turning your buildings at a 60-degree angle, you can now reduce that driveway width to, I use the number of 35 feet on those drive aisles when I'm doing a layout. And what we often have done in looking at parcel plans is we'll take the parcel plan out there that you may have, we'll take a look at it and give our best feedback and lay this facility out at a 90-degree enclosed, and then I'll also take that same parcel and then I'll try to do a layout at 60-degree to see where I can maximize space. Not in all cases, depending the shape of the parcel, do you get more rentable or sellable square footage when you turn it at a 60-degree angle. The parcel has a lot to do with that, its shape and its size, and also any setbacks or any easements that may be out there that you have to deal with when you're doing the layout.
Caesar, does that allow you then to do a sawtooth?
Go ahead, RK.
Does that allow you then to do a sawtooth configuration?
You know, sawtooth is something that we're actually looking at doing in Bakersfield, California right now, RK. The sawtooth is one that is yet to be, I think, engineering-wise perfected. We're working as a company diligently on it to try to make our framing work better. When we do a sawtooth configuration, RK, we have to use more steel to create our bearing wall system to make the loads transfer from the roof through the partitions and into the slab, which allows us to use light gauge steel when we do storage facilities. So we're working diligently on sawtooth right now from a structural engineering standpoint, which we have one in-house here at Mako that is constantly working on it. We are finding a sawtooth design as compared to, for example, a 90-degree enclosed project from a cost standpoint, RK, is running our system framing-wise 10 to 15% more. We want to try to get that number back down, make it a little bit more equal. So we're working on that just pretty much as quickly as we can to try to reduce that cost when we do sawtooth. We talk about some finishing out the units. I'm going to show you a couple photos here coming up in reference to actual finished units. Again, it's the Eucalyptus at Beaumont project. It goes from epoxying the floors to putting cabinets in the back of the units. Some folks I know out in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, have actually even done a little freestanding mezzanine or they're able to use that mezzanine for some additional storage within the unit. You're able to do that in some boat and RV storage buildings because of your height. Typically, the height of a boat and RV storage project is 16 feet. Again, that's allowing a 14-foot door in there. And by the time the roof is sloping, you may have 17 or 18 feet towards the back of the unit, depending on your roof pitch. So we've seen some neat things with the with even some freestanding mezzanines that are able to be put in afterwards and used for some additional storage there. Individual door alarms is something that just about every facility that we've been involved with has. We'll discuss a few more of these amenities also here on my next slide. My next slide that I'll be bringing up is again, I'm using the eucalyptus at Beaumont as an example. This Ted Dietz, the owner of that project, is kind of named his units. This one is called the Redwood Series, as you see up top there. Now, Ted elected to go to a 16-foot door width in lieu of that door width of 12-foot that you and I had talked about earlier, RK. Ted liked the 16-foot width, just a little bit bigger, no swing door next to it, just felt it was going to be easier for his clientele to move in and move out. On the height of it, again, 14-foot we discussed. Ted's got individual door alarms. He's got sealed cement floors. Again, each unit is individually electrically metered. The 4x8 skylight didn't happen. We kind of talked Ted out of that. And I'll tell you why, RK, on a skylight, anytime you penetrate a metal roof, at some point you tend to have at least a maintenance issue. Metal roofs work their best when they have no penetrations in them, so it's nice to have natural light in there. It does at one point, probably during the life of that project, it will require maintenance, and it always could introduce a roof leak when you penetrate a metal roof. So I always caution people about natural lights when you're looking at metal roofing. The last thing you want is a leaky roof.
And Caesar, did you say these had swing doors?
This one does not. Ted elected to do a 16-foot door width. He did not do swing doors next to his units. So
one of the questions we always get asked, Caesar, is if you're using a roll-up door that is that big, not a sectional but a roll-up, how do you get under it to get into the chain where you can easily hoist it up and down?
That's a good question. When you do a roll-up door, a commercial-style roll-up door that's got a chain hoist, they are spring-loaded, RK, and when they're tensioned properly after the installation, you should be able to unlatch. A door of that size will have a latch on both sides, and it'll have a kick plate in the middle. So you should be able to unlatch the door, and it should have a little bit of spring to it. The door has quite a long rope to it, so when you pull the door up about waist to shoulder high where you could duck underneath it, that door should stay, if tensioned properly, in a level position, and then be manually operated upwards by the chain. Again, in the boat and RV condo world, 99.9% facilities that we've been involved in, electric operators. They do have electric operators for those roll-up doors that go into a drum also. These doors you're looking at here, again, this is Ted Dietz project. It's a 14-foot wide door, 16-foot wide, 14-foot tall. These all have electric operators on them. So this is kind of a standard look. You know, you've got a metal mullion that goes in between the doors there. It's a very standard metal header panel and a gutter above there in reference to the exterior look of this project. Ted's project on the outside from the street side as it gets complete, and this is a very recent photo. This photo is about, I'm going to say about 3 weeks old. We're about 85 to 90% complete with this project, and Ted's now in the process. As you see those dirt driveways, he's pouring driveways right now. RK, are you seeing folks when they're asking you for feasibility work on these boat and RV condos for a little wider units?
Yeah, the trend is absolutely there for the wider units in the ownership. They tend to be narrower on the rental projects, but on condominium projects, Caesar, I think you're spot on that the developers are going for wider ones so that they make the sales process easier. Of course, we're talking about a little bit more expense, but once again, getting in and getting out is key and important in the investment.
Absolutely. Here's a photo RV. This is a Class A RV. He's got, I believe this one was a 42-foot was the length of this rig here. Now, this unit size is 14 foot wide. Again, it has a 12-foot door in it. So as you can see, as I call those mirrors kind of the Mickey Mouse mirrors, RK, it's pretty tight. And Ted had looked at a couple of sites that had the 12-foot wide doors, and his thought was that it just seemed a little bit tight, especially for the clientele that he was marketing to from the sales standpoint. Now, the difference, again, between a for-sale building and a for-rent facility, in my opinion, is when your for-rent facility is being laid out, I think that this is the proper bay width. I do recommend a 14-foot wide bay with a 12-foot door. Again, you're trying to maximize your property. Boat and RV storage is very land intensive. So when you're doing a for-rent facility, I'd say 80 to 90% of the units that we see are 14-foot wide, as opposed to the for-sale facility. Again, as we discussed, like RK just mentioned, the wider units seem to be a little bit more of a bigger sales point. Again, RK, you mentioned something in reference to the financing, that these owners of boat and RV condo facilities tend to have an easier time getting financed when they're actually buying the unit. Again, we're working with a little different clientele as far as the financial side of things. We find, and they find, bigger's better. People that have big toys typically have some big wallets to boot, and they will pay for size. Ted Deese will confirm that. He just found all of his bigger units sold faster. Here's a unit here. This is an 18-foot wide unit. We got a truck inside there just so you can kind of see the size of it. This depth of the unit ran about 35 feet. We'll talk a little bit about the depths of the units because they do vary. And what makes this steel system kind of nice is that you have flexibility in that partition wall you see behind the truck. That's a movable wall. We call that a longitudinal partition. This actual project and building has access on both sides, so you're able to move and enter on both sides. So that wall is movable there. The next slide we will go to, it's a pull-through unit. This slide, if we could bring it up here, this one here is about 70 foot in length. Well, I call length depth when we look at it here. As you can see, RK, that's kind of like a ski centurion ski board wakeboard boat. It's a very small boat, but again, we're 14 foot wide on the bay width there with that 12-foot door. Very nice. This longitudinal wall was removable, and he's able to pull right through. So that's, in essence, a drive-through unit. Again, very nice, very convenient for the folks. That's for sure. They do like the drive-through units. Let's touch on some amenities here. In these boat and RV condo facilities that we're currently seeing, I'm going to run through these fairly quick because I do want to get some time in for some questions. On the amenities, it's almost a given when you're doing the condo facility that a clubhouse is involved. Restrooms and showers have proven to be very, very important to the potential buyers of these units. A dump station is, in my opinion, a necessity. A dog run, a children's playground, and a wash bay, I debate those three. Very nice. We've seen facilities that have those that get complemented. At the same time, as we discussed, very land intensive. It could possibly interrupt how much rentable or sellable square footage you're working with there. The wash bay we don't see as much as we used to. The folks that buy these units we find are again in a little bit of a different financial position than the average Joe, if you will. What I mean by that is they're going to pay for detailing services to come out and probably detail their RV. They're not really ones that are going to hook up the hose and spend 3 hours detailing their RV themselves. Separate electrically metered 30-amp panel there. I use 30 amp as an example. I've seen as much and as high as 100 amp. 60 amp is something that we're seeing a little bit more consistent. Again, now some additional amenities we're seeing with some facilities. Propane, very nice feature. Firewood, air compressor I think is pretty neat that gets overlooked. It's important to always check your air when you're towing or before you go on a road trip in your RV. The last thing you want to deal with is a flat tire. And I don't see a lot of air compressors on sites currently that we're doing. I always bring them up to clients. I think it's, again, I tow a boat, and I have had a couple flat tires that I've had to fix, and let me tell you, it's no fun. And to put in an air compressor, it's very inexpensive to do. Wi-Fi is pretty much a given these days with the internet being as obviously as popular as it is. Valet service, that's something that we could touch on a little bit more in detail at a later time, but that's something that what I mean by valet service is when you call in to the facility, they may be able to pull your unit out or your rig out of the unit, I should say, and have that ready for you, be it your boat or RV. And you have the freedom to customize when you're doing boat and RV storage condo facilities. This next slide that I'll attempt to bring up here, this is again Eucalyptus at Beaumont. It is a finished unit, if you will, set at a dusty open house, and what you see here is an epoxy-coated floor. The cabinets were an added feature in the back. Oh, there we are. The cabinets were an added feature in the back, and it's a little bit of a workstation right there. Again, very popular. And then again, I mentioned that freestanding mezzanine. You don't see it here, but look at the height of this unit. As we get towards the back of it, it's upwards of 17.5 feet tall. Plenty of room if you wanted to do a little freestanding mezzanine. The next slide we'll bring up is this, it's an RV and car wash and store. And again, we talked about the luxury of having this kind of amenity on site. On the bay far left that you'll see there, not the closed roll-up door, but the open bay, that's an electric wash for boats or RVs, specifically for boats, or for RVs, I should say. What you can do is pull your rig in there. It scans your width, your height, and your length of the RV itself, and for $55 it gets a wash. The bay to the right of that, the middle bay, is just a wash bay, along with the bay far right, again a wash bay with a wand wash. This building, basically, structure complete, ran about $270,000 for what you see right there. Quite expensive. This owner does keep this open to the public, which allows some traffic from the just drive-by traffic to come in and utilize this amenity. He feels he generates more revenue by doing it that way. Poppy, on my end, I know we're getting, I'm kind of time watching here, and I apologize for going a little bit quick there, but we got a little bit behind, so I wanted to make sure I got through my presentation.
Not a problem.
Questions?
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Caesar and RK. We do have a lot of questions that have been submitted, so let me just kind of go through them. Caesar, this one is for you. Is there a magic number on the amount of land I should look for when building RV and boat storage?
RK touched on it a little bit, and I'll touch on it again. RK mentioned the discussion of possibly phasing, which we're a very big proponent of. Typically, there's a trigger number out there of about 5 acres plus when you're looking at boat and RV storage. We have seen that narrow down to about 3 to 4 acres, pending how the parcel's laid out, to get some more units in there. And again, it keeps your front-end economics down a little bit as far as cost of construction. RK, do you agree with the 5 acres? It's kind of a trigger number we see on our end.
Yeah, if you're going to produce a project where you've got room for expansion, you're going to need that 5 acres. If you're able to go in and out and get into a 30 to a 40 unit full phase and not expanding, you can do it for less. But you're right, Caesar. If you want to have expansion capability for going further out, I would think that in your layouts that the size of that parcel and the shape of it tremendously influence how big of a parcel you need.
Absolutely, it does.
The next question, can you give me an idea of the hard costs when building a boat and RV storage facility?
That's a loaded one. RK, we can both touch on it quickly. I mean, obviously where you're building is going to dictate a lot of that, being in a very rural area, a very populated area. I'll give you some examples. Again, these are very general. Please don't take them to the bank. And a lot of it depends on the curb appeal that you've got to work with from the municipality standpoint architecturally. A very broad example, dollars and cents, $50 to $60 a square foot. That would not include land, but that would be hard and soft cost. RK, could you elaborate, or do you agree?
I think that's a good starting range. As we said, one of the beauties of this is it's not as location sensitive, so you're not having to pay the absolute top dollar per square foot for that land. But Caesar, the point you made about 35% coverage and utility really puts the pressure on your land price.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. What are you currently seeing in terms of the absorption rate for RV and boat storage?
Okay, I'll let you touch on that. You can have a better answer than I.
You know, one of the trends that we've seen is in the more rural areas, particularly even in those destination locations, that sellout period becomes longer and longer, that it can go out to 36 to 40 months. If you're the first project in a market, you do get the pent-up demand, you get the novelty of it, and your project sellouts will be absorbed in a lesser period of time. But as this becomes more popular and there are more options for purchasing storage condominiums, it's going to affect that sellout, and that's one of the reasons why I so emphasize stressing your numbers to see what it does to your returns if your sellout period does increase.
Next question, and I know, Caesar, you touched on this somewhat, but we've had many people ask, how many amps per unit do you recommend for electrical service?
Yeah, it varies a little bit. It's a great question. Kind of depending on the clientele that you think you're going to be having in your facility. Again, 60 amp is what Ted decided to go with at Eucalyptus at Beaumont. So for a quick answer, I'm going to say 60 amp.
Okay, great. This is another question that I know you touched on, but again, people are asking it. What is the recommended unit width and length for RV and boat storage?
I could jump in on that one, RK, just by doing layouts, and I know, RK, you do quite a few of them also. We probably do 8 to 10 a week over here. We see building widths when you're going to access the units on both sides range from 80-foot wide to 100-foot wide. That's the entire building width. The depth of the units on an average, for example, if you're going to go back-to-back units, let's use that 100-foot wide example building, 18 by 50s. That's 50-foot has become a very common depth of a unit. The biggest RV on the road today is a 45-foot Prevost. Is that correct, RK?
That's it. And by the time you put a tow bar on the back of it and a motorcycle holder on the front, they get long.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So again, 50-foot is about the most common depth we see. Overall width of a building when accessing both sides, I'm going to say 100 feet is the most common we lay out.
All right, and we have time for one more question. Again, I know this is something you've touched on, but we've had several people ask, what is the recommended width of drive aisles?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, we could touch on this real quick again. Again, my recommended width when I'm doing a layout on a for-sale project is no less than 55 feet. That's, again, based on a 90-degree entry and an enclosed project. Wider is better. If you can get up to that 60, 65, that's fantastic. Obviously, RK, I know you're going to chime in here. That impact cell feasibility study may come out also.
Right, and we've been kind of using the older rule of thumb, but it's a little bit more conservative in terms of producing a wider drive aisle, and that's the 1.25 depth to driveway width, so that, you know, that's kind of our standard that we use, that if you're going to do a 50-foot deep unit, multiply that by 1.25, and that gives you the width of the drive aisle in front of it. Caesar, has that been a standard that is still applicable?
It is, RK. The only, you know, that, for example, what you cite there, that comes out to 62.5 feet as far as the drive aisle width, which I think is perfect. The only problem I see, not really even problem, but when you use that method, is that when you do buildings, say 100-foot wide throughout a parcel, you don't really know the depth of the unit because it could change with the movable wall on the inside. But yes, for standard practices, multiplying it by 1.25 on a 50-foot depth unit comes out to 62.5. Very, very, very much works.
All right. Thank you very much, Caesar and RK. That concludes our webinar for today. Any closing comments that either of you might have?
I just want to thank everyone for listening. Hopefully this hour was helpful to folks out there that may be looking at this boat and RV condo concept for themselves. RK and I on October 10th will be doing a full one-day seminar, which will start at 8 a.m. and go till 5 p.m. That's going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. If you're interested in possibly participating in that and attending that, the slide is up now. You can visit our website. That's www.makosteel.com. and we will have information on that one-day seminar on October 10th in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you to Minico. RK, again, I always enjoy doing these with you. You're full of information, and I always enjoy listening. I learn from you every time I listen. So I appreciate your participation.
Thank you so much, Caesar, for sponsoring this, and for Mako Steel to go out and work hard to educate the public on the nuances of storage condominiums. It's greatly appreciated in the industry, and I know our friends in the business always turn to you for leadership when it comes to design, and it's really great to hear you talking about just the new things you're doing with the sawtooth, et cetera. Just shows your commitment to the industry. Thanks, Caesar.
You bet, RK.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank everyone for attending today. We hope that we've provided you with valuable information that will assist you in your investment or development endeavors with RV and boat storage. For more information about Mako Steel, you may call 800-383-4932 or email webinar@makosteel.com. And in addition, as Caesar has already said, you can visit their website at makosteel.com. Last but not least, you'll shortly receive an email with a link to the archived presentation. As a token of our appreciation, you will also receive an exclusive offer to purchase our RV and Boat Resource Kit at a discounted price. So please watch your inbox for this email, and be sure to check our website for information about our upcoming webinars. We have 2 scheduled in the month of October and 2 in November. Thank you again for attending, and have a wonderful rest of the day.